Alright, today I'm going to be installing these race headers on my G35. The methods I'm going to be using work for 350Z as well. So I'm going to show you the detailed install on how to install these race headers. So let's get started. Before I get started, I did want to show you that I wrapped my engine intake system with the header wrap and then hot glued with Gorilla Glue that part back on. What this will do is it'll protect the heat from heat soaking into the intake system. It will keep the cool air from down here that goes into the pipe cooler, and I will be building a heat shield for this that will suck cool air from down here in the fender well area. But let's get started with the header install. Alright, some of the first things you're going to need are just various tools like these. You'll need a jack as well, and a drain pan, obviously some jack stands. There is an easy way to jack it up, like this right here. Work smarter, not harder, guys. You want to put wood underneath that jack stand, especially if you're over mud or something, but I will be moving the car up soon. Drain all the coolant out. Remove the radiator cap, helps drain it faster. And then you'll want to put the coolant in a container and dispose of it properly, or reuse it if it's still clean. In this case, I just put it in, so it's still clean. Start by removing the cover and the intake pipe, which this is my aftermarket one, so it's easier. Alright, down here there is going to be a hose. You're going to want to remove that. And then you can see right here that there's another hose on the water pipe. You can remove that as well. You don't have to remove the upper hoses because you can just slide the thing out of the way, but there's a 12mm bolt back there and then two 10mm above the AC compressor. I usually remove this thing. It's not necessary, but it makes it a little bit easier to move stuff in and out. Now that you got all that stuff out of the way, we'll go ahead and maneuver this pipe up and out of the way. Alright, now you want to spray all these bolts down with some penetrant such as PB Blast or Liquid Wrench. I use Best Line as well. Now we're on the steering column here, the steering rack. You'll want to mark where it's at, that way your tires are aligned properly whenever you put it back on. Disconnect the O2 sensor, which is that green connector. Then we can get started on the passenger side, removing this hose right here, and then removing this connector to make sure you don't break it. You won't be able to get it all the way out yet. Removes the hose on the intake. And then remove the hose for the evap. Disconnect the fuel pressure regulator and wiggle it out. This will make kind of a mess, so beware. And then you'll remove the rubber hose on the water pipe on the passenger side. And then that little hose as well. Alright, remove this 12mm bolt right here. Now you'll be able to move this pipe out of the way and get that connector undone. Now for down here, there's a bolt. It's 12mm underneath the water pipe. It's best to just use a swivel socket and a couple extensions, and it'll come right out of there. Once you get it out, you can pull the pipe out. And just remove it completely. Now the other side didn't have a heat shield, but the passenger side does, so remove the bolts that hold the heat shield on. Then you can pull the heat shield right out. Alright, same as the other side, spray all the bolts so it can penetrate. Go on the bottom side and you will see where it connects from the catalytic converters, or in my case a test pipe, and undo the 3 bolts that hold it in. One of them is a stud on the stock manifolds. Alright, just remove all the bolts. I removed the lower one while I was already down there. After you remove the bolts, it comes right out. And as you can see here, huge difference. That is so tiny compared to the aftermarket header. Big flow improvement. Now we put them on. The passenger side was a little bit trickier. You had to maneuver around a few things, but it is possible to put them in without having to drop the subframe. You just have to maneuver it around a little bit and then it'll go right up there. Also, I reused the factory metal gaskets because I've always used the multi-layered steel gaskets. Those cheap aftermarket ones always fail. Just make sure yours are good, and that's how it should look. Now we'll reassemble everything that we took off, and after it's assembled we will head over to the driver's side to get started on that. Just remove the bolts like you did on the passenger side. The lower one's easiest to get from the bottom. Once you get the bolts out, you can just slide the exhaust right out. In this case, I just let it drop. Now we got the new one going in. Super easy on the driver's side. Bolts right up and just put a bolt to hold it in place. Now reassemble, put all the bolts back in. Alright, now you'll just reassemble the intake system and the water pipe. Don't forget to obviously reattach the lower test pipes and bolt them up with the new hardware that was included with the race header, and just repeat the same process to the passenger side as well. Another thing to note when installing these headers, the cheaper ones at least, some of them have clearance issues. This one was fine, but just beware, some of them like to hit the steering shaft. Alright, now we're at the radiator filling time. Now with this you will definitely have to burp the system, because if you don't on these G35s and 350Zs, they will pretend like they're overheating because they have an air pocket. So what I like to do is I like to pour it in kind of slow and then squeeze the hoses to let air pockets out, and then fill it up and squeeze hoses, and continuously doing this with the car at an incline. That way the air bubbles will come out. You will have to start the car, run it at about 2500 RPM for about 10 or 11 seconds. Repeat this process 2 or 3 times, and after the engine cools down you will check the coolant level again, releasing air from the bleeder valve, which is located above the passenger side header. There's a little Phillips head screw you unscrew, and keep repeating the process until the fluid level is where it needs to be, and you should have a good hot blowing heater. If you didn't know how to burp the system, definitely check out videos on it. There's a lot of good ones, and Motordyne does a really good how to bleed your air out of the radiator. Well, now that we've already got that out of the way, we'll go ahead and put this back on and start it up. Now, upon initial start, you should be looking for leaks down below. Also, the headers will definitely smoke. That's from the grease from your hands and from the header wrap. So don't worry about smoke, because as you can see right here, you'll start to see smoke from the headers. That's totally normal. Don't worry about it. It's nothing burning, but definitely check to make sure stuff isn't burning at the same time. Make sure you're in a well ventilated area because this stuff is horrible smelling and it's probably hazardous. I'm not sure, but don't want to take a risk. It sounds so good. So now we're going to take it down the street. It's sounding really good, especially when he takes off right here. Sounds great. Well, that's basically it for this install. Definitely noticeable power increase. As you can see, the before and after speaks for itself. Very restrictive exhaust from the factory. The new exhaust is awesome. We will be doing a dyno soon, so definitely stay tuned. Seeing how much horsepower we increased with all the mods since the last time we went to the dyno. This process only took 5 hours to do. Everywhere I've read says about 10, so if you do it this way, it's the easiest way to do it. And if you haven't already, hit the like button, share the video, drop a comment, and stay tuned for more. God bless.